Hello, and welcome to another episode of Twisted, Not Your Mama's Book Club, the podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Brandy.
That's Brandy over there. And in today's episode, we are tackling
the very long,
very monster long book by Anne Rule called The Stranger Beside Me, which is her personal account I guess, of Ted Bundy.
Sure.
Anne Rule is a crime writer. I think this is one of her first books. And after that, she started writing all kinds of books about more serial killers. And
oh, yeah. She did a book.
I have the Green River Killer book.
The Green River Killer.
Yeah.
Also, there's one about a female killer. Shoot. I just had the name of it earlier today. I actually want to read that one. That looks interesting.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I love bitches who kill. They're my favorite.
Okay, guys, I feel like you're kind of jealous because they got away with it.
Well, because we all know I'm a rage killer. I could never be methodical enough to be a serial killer.
But hold on. She's never actually killed anybody.
Anne Rule does a great job with this book, I have to be honest. But it's a pay attention, do not turn away.
Everything is important in this book.
Everything is important. Everything leads in.
Yeah, it's also important to note that this book came out in 1980, which was before Ted Bundy was executed. So the epilogue in this book is also quite long.
Yeah.
Because she's got all other kinds of information that she has to throw in there after he started, we'll get there. But
yeah, no. So it starts off with the first part, and it's not even a chapter, and that is quite long. And then it goes into the chapters of the original book, and at the end, it has like 2-part series of things that have happened after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little detailed. We're going to let Sarah kick us off.
So we're going to try and go, my notes go chapter by chapter, but after about chapter 6, there was just so much information.
It was ridiculous,
that it felt not right to write it down by chapter and instead start making notes by the murder.
Yeah. I agree.
So we'll start kind of chapter by chapter, but like I said, Anne Rule's writing is not completely linear either. She skips forward, she goes back. I mean, for a perfect example, chapter 1 starts in Florida, which is at the end of Ted's story.
And I'd like to just shout out, Florida man.
It's always a Florida man.
Always a Florida man. We have a theme coming up for our studio. We are going to decorate the studio in tropical serial killers. Thank you, Florida man.
I guess.
There's a glut of her.
Oh my god.
This lady's crazy. Okay, let's get on track. It does start off chapter 1.
It's a skip ahead chapter. Is kind of like, the introduction.
Right.
It's very movie-esque.
Yes.
Anne Rule, I tried to look it up. At one point in the book, she starts talking about how she moved to LA because she wrote a
She was writing a screenplay.
And I could not find
anything
on what movie she was writing, and it was driving me crazy. So if anybody knows what movie
please let us know,
wrote or helped write or was anything a part of, I want to know.
Just on the same track as movies, I actually put in the Stranger Beside Me movie.
Oh yeah, can we put on the
It was
Zac
horrible.
Efron movie?
No, baby, it's bad. It's
the
on
Zac
YouTube.
Efron movie, not the
the Zac
Beside
Efron.
Me.
Yes, much better.
I want to look at Zac Efron while we're recording this.
Okay, let Sarah have Zac Efron. One of our technical assistants will help us with that.
Assistines.
But I'm bumping. Okay, so I tried to watch the actual 1989, 90 something movie, and it starred a couple people. Who was the guy that you said
I don't remember what his name was, but when I started looking at pictures of him, he was in that movie Enough with Jennifer Lopez. He was the evil husband that beat up J-Lo.
And then he got his ass beat.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then the other, some of the other characters in that movie were...
The movie was horrible.
Was it?
I couldn't watch 2 minutes of it. It had all this random BS. It was like a Lifetime movie gone horribly
Billy
wrong.
Campbell.
Billy Campbell.
Was Bundy. And then Barbara
Hershey. She's amazing.
Was Anne Rule. I started looking her up. She was... I recognized her from Once Upon a Time.
Yep. No, she's amazing. She's an amazing actress. She does Anne Rule really well, but there's so much bullshit
And horrible.
And just no, it doesn't stick to the book.
Yeah.
And so, like, all of a sudden, this is supposed to be set in the early 70s. And surprise, everyone's wearing 90s and 80s clothes and haircuts. I was like, you guys are so off base. Okay.
So don't watch this film
Don't watch the film. Sarah would like to recommend
the movie, and I'm going to butcher it. It's extremely
wicked, shockingly evil, and vile.
There you go. Starring Zac Efron and
Liz Collins.
Yeah.
Who is,
but
guess
that
whose
is
daughter?
More from Joan? I don't know.
No.
I don't know.
That is Phil Collins' daughter.
Ah, nice.
Nice.
Anyway.
Love me some Phil Collins.
So, the movie starring Zac Efron and Lily Collins, would you say Liz Collins?
Lily Collins, yes, I'm
sorry. Is more from Liz's standpoint than Anne Rule's standpoint. So, okay, so the book. Anne Rule, Stranger Beside Me. Again, chapter 1 is a skip ahead episode, kind of like a movie intro. You know, it starts with Florida. But we're going to just kind of gloss over that because we're going to get back to Florida later on. Mm-hmm. Chapter 2, a.k.a. Baby Teddy.
Baby Teddy.
Baby Teddy.
I got some problems with Baby Teddy. I'm going to tell you right now.
What are your problems with Baby Teddy?
He holds a lot of anger towards women. And Freud will tell you that that's because you have mother issues. For me, I think his mother did the best that she could. It was 1943, and she was...
He was born out of wedlock in 1946.
1946, and she was
scandalous
pregnant.
On my notes.
Yeah, it was super scandalous.
To Eleanor Cowell.
Yes, ma'am.
Who was part of a religious family.
Very
Her dad
religious.
is unknown. She, at one point, says he was a
sailor. Mm-hmm.
Another point, she says he was some other branch of the military. I don't know.
I got my theories. We'll get into those later.
So Eleanor, Louise is what she goes by,
yes.
right? Was part of a very religious family. So when she was 7 months pregnant, Louise left home and went to live in a maternity home
for unwed mothers.
In Vermont, right? At this point, they're in Philly, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're on the East Coast for sure.
They're definitely East Coast.
Yep. So after Ted was born, Louise and Ted went back to Louise's parents' home, where everyone started referring to Louise as Ted's sister.
She actually leaves the baby for 3 months.
Does she?
Yes. And the grandfather, Sam, demands that she goes back and gets Teddy.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first 3 months of his life, we find out he's not held, he's not cuddled. Like all the points where you're supposed to be snuggle, luggy, lovey, huggy, kissy baby, he's not getting that for the first 3 months. So they go back and they get the baby. And what do? They ask about raising the baby as the grandparents' child. Is that correct?
I don't remember that in the book at all.
Yeah, the grandparents say that that's our kid. We had a baby.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. Everyone starts referring. I don't think they wanted to raise him.
No.
They were trying to protect themselves from shame.
Right, because the grandpa's a deacon in the church.
Okay. Ted is referred to as Louise's brother, and he is raised in a family where his mom is treated like a sister, and his grandpa is his dad, and his grandma is his mom.
Right.
When he was growing up, he was very close to his grandpa dad. But in 1950, so Ted was about 4 years old then, Louise changed her last name to Nelson, left Philadelphia, took Ted, and moved to Tacoma, Washington.
Yes, ma'am.
In 1951, Louise met John Bundy, and they married. She changed her last name and Ted's last name to Bundy, because, when your sister gets married, your last name changes.
Well,
at this point, he still thought that...
Right, he was confused.
Yes.
But I would like to say, yay for the stepfather who takes the child on. Hooray for the man who gives the baby the name. And John Bundy did as best I think he could with Teddy. But, Teddy recounts to Anne when they're doing the suicide hotline service together.
The crisis hotline, yep.
Yeah, the crisis hotline. That he was so appalled and angry to find out that he was illegitimate. Wow.
Well, and he was really ashamed of John to begin with.
Yeah, too middle class.
Yeah, he was too middle class. He wasn't educated. So, let's backtrack. So, Ted had 4 half-siblings that he babysat a lot. His sister mom favored him. She suggested to him around the age of 13 that he start saving for college.
Yeah. Because she knew he was brilliant.
He was really intelligent. Obviously, you don't murder that many people not being intelligent. But he won a scholarship to college.
Right.
When he graduated high school, he had a juvie record, but not like anything violent.
No, it was like car theft.
Yeah, it was theft. He had just, I think, 2, and they were, one of them was sealed, but it was very, like, it wasn't even like a whole case was written up. It was like,
let's don't dole up what we did in high school. We all got a record, be honest.
So, Ted started at University of Washington in 1966. There he met Stephanie Brooks.
Which her real name is Diane. And I'm not sure, and I'd like to just stop there. Anne Rule wants to keep people's like real names and identities secret, but at the end of the book, she just tells you everybody anyway, so it's like, what? Are you just trying to confuse me?
Did she do that in the epilogue?
No, she doesn't. Yes.
Oh, then that's why. Because at that point,
there's no point.
You figured out who everyone was. Anyway, so Stephanie Brooks, aka Diane. Diane's kind of where it all starts to unravel for him even more.
Yeah, he finds his first love.
Diane is his first love. It's completely one-sided at first.
Oh, yeah.
Ted is just obsessed with her, Correct. Manufactures these moments with her, shows up where she is, tries to, come up with hobbies they have in common, and
For him, that was the aspiration. She came from a well-off California family. She was beautiful. She was smart. She was everything that his simple little
life never had.
Yeah, everything that he wanted for himself, she embodied. Yep. So it wasn't just a matter of being obsessed with her. He was obsessed with the idea of who he could be as well.
Yep, exactly. And that's where it all starts to unravel for Ted. When he and Diane were together on and off for 6 years. Like Brandy said, he felt that Diane was higher class than him. At this point, he hasn't completely lost it mentally, but he does start trying to do all these little things to make himself more high class, such as dating Stephanie, who is higher class. He gets a job at a country club, and that job at that country club is really where his manipulation really kicks off, because he meets this older woman who I cannot remember her name.
But it's a pattern with him.
Yeah, it's a pattern.
As you come to see.
So he starts manipulating this older widow. He talks her all the time into lending her money, her car, her home. At one point he talks her into letting him borrow his home. That way he can bring girls over.
Right. And she makes fancy dinners. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Total BS. And this is where he really learns that, hey, women are going to fall for my bullshit.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So after about 6 years, Diane broke up with him. Ted actually dropped out of college when Diane broke up with him. Mm-hmm. He dabbled in politics for a little bit. He was on doing some campaign work
for Jim Evans.
And after he dabbled in the politics and came back, he officially dropped out of college. At that point, I think he was still like, oh, maybe I'll come back. I don't really know.
Well, he was making good money.
Yep.
So him and Anne Rule meet at a suicide crisis hotline.
So that's in chapter 2, where Ted drops out of college. Chapter 3, chapter 3 is all about his working years.
Right.
So that's when he meets Liz, who Rule calls Meg.
Yeah. Super confusing. Thank you.
Starts dating. We're just gonna call her Liz. Starts dating Liz. Liz has a daughter. You can see from Liz's perspective in the movie with Zac Efron, which is on in the background right now. He's all being creepy on the TV.
It just makes her happy. I don't know.
Oh, Zac Efron is so beautiful. Ugh. He can sing. He can dance.
Ugh. Okay, so
I'm allowed to talk about Zac Efron if I want.
So they work together, and so the difference between Anne and Ted at the crisis center is that Anne is actually doing it as a voluntary thing. Mm-hmm. Ted is being paid to work the night shift. Well, he's still trying to put himself through college. He hasn't completely lost it yet.
Yep.
He opens up to Anne. He befriends an older lady.
Yep.
And he manipulates her.
Yep.
And he opens up to Anne about Diane/Stephanie. And you find out he also opens up to her about his being illegitimate. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe back in early 60s, 70s, that was a big thing. But I just want to say, wah. Okay, get over yourself. That's not a good reason, you asshole. Continuing on.
So Ted meets Rule at a crisis center. They both work on the phone. And they become friends. After he works for a while, he decides that he wants Diane back.
Right.
And the way he's going to get Diane back, even though he is dating Liz this entire time,
the entire time,
he decides that he is going to get Diane back by going to law school.
Right.
So he applies to, and that's in Chapter 4. Chapter 5, which is 1973, he starts secretly seeing other women behind Liz's back.
And Stephanie's, for that matter.
Well, we're not actually at Stephanie yet.
Right there yet.
So at the beginning of 1973 is when he starts seeing other women, and that's when he ultimately decides he wants Stephanie back. He's going to start applying to law school. He gets accepted to the University of Utah in 1973, but fall comes and he decides to go to Puget Sound instead.
Right. He says that he finally gets accepted. The first time he applied, they turned him down. The second time he applied, he gets accepted. He writes this grandiose letter about how amazing he is. His ability to be a narcissist actually is dumbfounding to me. I've never met, and that's including Kanye West, anyone as obsessed with his own self. So he gets accepted, and he fakes this, I was in a serious accident.
Yeah, but he was perfectly fine.
He just twisted his ankle. So we're not really exactly sure why he doesn't go to Utah, but we think that Stephanie/Diane is the reason. He's going to pursue her. He's got a cushy job with the politicians, and he's going, to apply for law school. So he starts pursuing her. What he does to her is kind of...
Yeah, so at the end of Chapter 5, Rule kind of ends it as, like, we went our separate ways. Like, he went off to law school.
Right.
I went off and started doing my own thing. So we weren't in touch as much anymore because we didn't see each other every day. So just like we do, Chapter 6 starts and Rule backtracks again.
Right.
So she backtracks to the summer of 1973. Ted starts seeing Diane again and begins introducing her to people as his fiance. Even though he is still dating Liz at this point, he goes and he meets her family, courts Stephanie all the way through Christmas. They spend the holidays together.
Gifts,
they spend, takes her out to all these fancy restaurants, buys her
laying
things.
it on thick.
Lays it on super thick. And then New Year's happens and he ghosts her.
Yeah, completely goes MIA. She's like, he didn't even have sex with me on the last day I was there. I gave him these expensive Christmas gifts. He gave me nothing. She gets really depressed, writes a letter, and says, what has happened? Why have you done this to me? And he doesn't answer the letter, so she calls him, and he actually says, this is a quote, I don't know what you're talking about. Click. So, for me, being a Irish revengeful Portuguese, for me, I would have left it right there. I'm not from Vegas. I would have left it right there. I would have been like, bitch, you wanted me. Now I don't want you. How does it feel? And I would have moved on with my life. Somehow our boy Teddy doesn't feel enough revenge from dumping her like that.
I don't know. This is one thing that I don't know if it's talked about anywhere else. It's not really talked about in this book, but I would like to know what happens. Why? Because at this point, when he ghosts Diane,
What year did he ghost Diane?
He hasn't murdered anybody yet. In
I don't
73.
He goes through the beginning of 74.
The first one was Linda Ann Healy, which was February 1974.
There you go.
Well, okay, so that's not 73.
But he ghosted her in February 74.
I understand. So at that point, when he had ghosted her, he had not murdered anybody yet.
What I think happens... he kills January 4th, Karen Sparks. What I think happens is he didn't feel the satisfaction he thought he would. He ghosts her. He doesn't want her. She doesn't get it. Now he's like, you know what? I don't feel satisfied. I'm going to go kill a bunch of people in a horrible...
Yeah, but I'm saying I want to know how you get there.
I don't know how you get there.
That's what I want to know. That's the question. How do you get from... I'm going to go and get revenge on this girl to I'm gonna murder everyone that I can find that looks like her. Like
you had it typed, that's for damn sure.
You had her if you wanted her. Like what happened? Like when did having her not be enough anymore?
Because it was never about having her, I think. I think it was about the revenge that he had to satisfy himself. But somehow between the revenge and him realizing that he was still empty inside, that's where he turns to raping, murdering. I mean, it's sad, you know?
Yeah, so after he breaks it off with Diane and ghosts her, things start moving really, really fast.
Oh, yeah.
So
he's averaging
in
like
January of 2000, January of 1974, his first victim is Karen Sparks, often identified as Joni Lenz.
Yes. She was 18.
She was 18 years old. He sexually assaulted her in her bed as she slept. She survived, though, so she was not his first murder. His first murder was Linda Ann Healy,
ma'am, you were right
who was 21. He murdered her in February 1974. She was attending the University of Washington. He murdered her in that area.
Yes, ma'am. And he abducts her so he can take her back and torture her.
Yeah, he abducts all of them. And the really fascinating thing about Ted is he had this way of getting women in his car. And it's not like he threw a bag over their heads and dragged them off. He would talk these women into his car. Like, I need your help. Can you come help me do this? Can you help me lift this? And we're not going to victim shame at all.
No, that deep sigh is pure disgust.
Taking advantage of someone who wants to help.
Who wants to be a nice person, who's a good soul, who's a sweet baby, and he just wants to manipulate, abuse, and do sick, horrible things. It just makes me so angry that so many women who were good-natured women, smart, he had a type. They were very smart. They knew what they were doing. He really had a way of manipulating them, and it makes me sad. It makes me sick. I absolutely think he is the worst. The worst.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's one of the most prolific serial killers in the United States. One of, not the most, but one of. So, February of 1974, that's Linda Ann Healy. In March of 74 is Donna Gail Manson, who's 19 years old.
That girl's a little wild. She's going to an alternative school. She's into alchemy, and she got a little black magic going on. And it was normal for her to disappear for a week or two. So, she didn't even get reported missing, I think, for 3-4 weeks. But she was very close to her parents.
Yeah, her parents were she wouldn't just leave and not... we'll go for a couple of days, but she won't not call for weeks at a time.
Right.
So April 1974 is Susan Elaine Rancourt, who's 18 years old. At this point, we're still in Washington, right?
Yeah, these are all Washington. So he actually put off going to the University of Utah to pursue a law career to just start hurting women, slashing up women.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting that he still ends up in Utah anyway.
He does end up in Utah, yes.
Yeah.
And
so
because the heat was on.
After Susan Rancourt, who was 18 by the way, in May of 1974, he abducts and murders Kathy Parks, who's 20 in Oregon. We switched over to Oregon now. Then in June of 1974, he abducts Brenda Carol Ball, who's 22 years old. And then George Ann Hawkins, who's 18 years old.
Oh, she was
Those
beautiful.
were not
Did
in the same day. Yeah, they're all beautiful. All of them
There
were
were beautiful women, and then there was, shockingly beautiful, stop your heart and take a look at her face. And it just makes me even angrier.
And these were both June, but they were different days.
Yeah.
In June.
Yeah, no, he was kill him on the 1st and kill him on the 11th. Mm-hmm. Good for him.
And then next up we have Lake
Shamamish,
which is July 1974. He first abducts Janice Ann Ott, who's 23 years old. And then Denise Naslin in the same day. He didn't abduct them at the same time, but the same day. So he abducted Janice Ann Ott at the lake, took her wherever he took her. And then went back and got Denise.
Right.
And this is when he starts the sling. This is when he starts the, I'm injured, my arm hurts, can you help me load this boat up on my car?
And then they're like, where's the boat? And he's like, oh, we have to drive down the street.
We have to drive to my boat to get my boat.
These poor baby angels. And it was such a different time. They were so
I mean, this is, and Rule talks about it a lot. At first, the police are like, well, that's what happens when you start legalizing hitchhiking.
Which he was implemental in getting the law in Washington State for hitchhiking approved. The politician that he was supporting and doing work for was pushing for that law, and Ted was on some kind of safety commission with the police different policing facilities. I guess I'm losing my train of thought. And he was implemental in actually getting that law approved. So hitchhiking, was legal again. Makes me ill. I would just like to mention that he puts 4 different bodies at Issaquah Lake, or actually Issaquah Forest. They find 4 different bodies when the cops start to figure stuff out, and it is Taylor Mountain's where they find 2 of the bodies, and then they find 4 different bodies at Issaquah. All these Indian names, I'm sorry, I'm probably slaying them. But yeah, I think that's interesting. He didn't even care about human life. They weren't buried separately. They were just all like, oh, let's just mix all these dead bodies together.
Well, they weren't buried
at all
whole either. Yeah. He would cut off their heads.
So again, let's go back to, why is dumping your girlfriend reason to do the things that you're doing?
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep. So, and then September of 1974, a hunter finds Janice Ott while he's out hunting, finds part of her body. October of 1974, now we're going over to Utah.
I would like to mention that one of the kidnappings, somebody does a composite sketch to the police officers in Washington State. And
they do the composite sketch after Lake Sammamish.
Yes, because there's a guy named Ted, and he looks like this, and he's asking for girls to help him, because one of the girls that he actually tries to abduct walks away. She's like, no, I'm good. I'm going to go back to my friends. So at this point,
they do a police sketch. So Meg, Liz sees this composite sketch and calls the police.
The state police.
And gives them the name. They have, at this point, though, thousands of suspects named Ted.
Like, okay, so she's probably an angry girlfriend.
Ted is the 70s what Ashley is to the 90s.
Yeah. No, and what Britney is to the early 2000s. Yeah. Okay, it's ridiculous. But yeah, so I want to mention that his name goes among 1,000 other names. So he leaves for Utah. He goes to the University of Utah. He rewrites a submission letter. He gets accepted.
To Utah. And then in October of 1974, he kidnaps and murders Melissa Smith and Laura and Aime. Is that how you say it? Aime? It's A-I-M-E.
Well,
I want to say Amy, but...
October, he gets Nancy Wilcox.
How did I miss Nancy Wilcox?
How did you miss that, girl?
I don't
know. Nancy Wilcox, and then, and the last name's Aime. Like, Aime Supplies on Wile E. Coyote.
Like Amy without an extra E.
Amy with the extra E. Yes. We're getting our snacks delivered to us. Thank you, ma'am.
Not the crunchy ones, though.
Not the crunchy snacks.
Very upset that we're eating while we're recording. He put his head down on the
I would like to mention, as we go forward, the heat is on in Washington State. The heat is even on in Oregon. Shit. And he goes to Utah, Colorado. I don't blame him, because when you think of the state of Utah and Colorado, you don't think of this renounced, prideful, very intelligent, strong police department. It's not what you think of. You think of kind of backwards. I definitely, because I was raised in Utah, definitely think of a religion-dominated kind of area. And Colorado is famous for its hippies and its marijuana use. I'm being told to stop. I'm just telling you how I feel about these two states. So, anyway, moving right along. we ended with Laura Ann Aim.
In Utah, yep. And then in November, he has the attempted kidnap of Carol Durant. She was 18 years old.
She's a badass.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say.
Yep.
I've seen interviews with her. I like her. She looks like the total stoner.
Yeah.
In the interviews, and she's driving her Camaro. Nice. I mean, she's my type of girl.
But he does kidnap and successfully murder Deborah Kent, who's 17 years old.
The same fucking night.
Same night. Yep. So Carol gets away. Deborah does not.
Unfortunately.
And then in January of 1975, so we're up to nearly a full year of murdering at this point without being caught. Has not even been arrested yet for anything.
I would like to mention he takes September, August.
He takes the holiday season off.
He really does. He enjoys some summertime.
So January, that we know of.
That we know of,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So January 1975, now we're in Colorado. I cannot remember, why are we in Colorado? Was he there skiing? Was he there just
He had stolen some credit cards from the girls in Utah. And he was
That's another thing he did.
Oh my God,
He would steal credit cards. He would steal, I mean, obviously you could steal cash, get away with it, but he got away with so many stolen credit cards. He would are people just leaving their wallets on tables? Like, I don't understand how he had so many stolen credit cards.
What I love is he doesn't understand that using someone's credit card for gas.
Oh, yeah, can track, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
He totally gets
But,
nailed
I mean,
by
in 1974, credit cards were probably a new thing, right? I mean,
I would assume. Absolutely. But, he's super smart and super sexy, but the credit cards get him.
Yeah, credit cards getting gas in the 70s.
And he always kept his tank full. They mention that in the book. Anne actually says he was obsessive about keeping his tank full. You know why? Because the last thing you want to do as a serial killer is run out of gas in your murder beetle bug on the side of the road. Okay?
Murder beetle bug. That's a new commercial for Volkswagen. Your murder beetle bug.
Yeah, the murder.
They are bringing the van back. Did you see that?
I love the van. Okay, the beetle bug not so much, but the van, it's cute, man. I like it.
Makes me want to put flower stickers on everything.
I know. Let's be hippie children.
No, we are not wrapping this up. This tangent is awesome.
Hippie children.
Hippie children. I used
We're
to
too
love
close
what
to Austin.
It's always the things that come back around. I mean, when in the 90s and early 2000s, that's when the 70s stuff started coming back in. And smiley faces were everywhere. And we had the little peace frogs everywhere.
Oh, I love the frogs. And now it's like the 90s are coming back.
I know. The chokers, I can't.
Yeah. The long skirts with the slits up the side and the short jackets. Hey. No, not what you're doing.
Dress has a slit up the side.
She's...
Oh, goodness.
It's a dress, not a skirt.
So, March of 1975, the remains of Healy, Rancourt, Parks, and Ball are found in Washington. At this point, Ted is still in Colorado, though. And in March of 75, he also murders Julie Cunningham, who's 26 years old.
In January, the disappearance of Karen Campbell.
Mm-hmm. We talked about her already.
I just want to mention that he, pulls off the side of the road and, snatches her up by a hotel.
Oh.
So she didn't fall for the bullshit. He overpowered that one.
He just picked her up and threw her in the car.
Oh, yeah. And the beetle bug of murder.
Beetle murder bug. In April of 1975, he kidnaps and murders Denise Oliverson, who's 24, also in Colorado.
Also from Colorado.
May of 75 is Lynette Dawn Culver, who is 12 years old.
Oh, it doesn't say that. Are you fucking kidding? Oh,
she is 12 years old.
I missed that because I think the last girl is 12.
His last murder is also a 12-year-old girl, yes. And then in June of 1975, he kidnaps and murders Susan Curtis. And then finally, in August of 1975, he is arrested for the first time in Utah.
And I have to say, hurrah for my Utah guys. Thank you. But also, Ann Rules describes the Detective Hayward as stocky. She uses the fucking word stocky.
You gotta get over it.
I can't get over stocky.
You're gonna edit out the pause.
Trigger.
Oh my god. Okay, so in August of 1975, Ted is pulled over for erratic driving and running stoplights. When he's pulled over, the police officer was like, she literally wrote down Utah stocky cop on her notes. he gets out of the vehicle, which I don't know if that's a thing in the 70s that eventually everyone stopped doing, but my whole point was that police officers are that's a trigger for them. If you get out of the vehicle, they are trained to think that you have something to hide that you do not want them to see in the vehicle. Don't get out of the fucking car. Stay in the car.
Agreed.
Anyway, so Ted is arrested in August 1975 in Utah because the arresting officer, when he went over to the vehicle and looked inside, he found a mask, gloves, rope, a crowbar, and handcuffs. However, Ted is released the next day on bail. In October of 1975, he's identified in a lineup by Carol DeRanch.
Yes, ma'am.
He is immediately arrested and charged with aggravated assault in Salt Lake County. Arrested and charged with aggravated assault in Salt Lake County Jail. Mm-hmm. In February 1976, his trial begins, and he's found guilty.
In between then and there,
he
gets out on bail.
No, I thought he was in jail the entire time.
Mm-mm.
No? Mm-mm. Oh, that's right. Because
he gets out on bail,
yep.
And he goes and sees Liz.
Mm-hmm.
He also has lunch with Anne. They talk. He's annoyed because Liz tells him, no, you may not take out my 12-year-old daughter for burgers. He tells Anne at lunch, they enjoy lunch together in Seattle. He goes back to Washington. That Liz would not let him take her 12-year-old daughter and the 12-year-old daughter's best friend out for burgers.
Ted, can you blame her?
But yeah, so he's like, my relationship with Liz is so strong, she knows I'm completely innocent of these charges.
Yep.
And he ends up drinking a lot at lunch, which again is a pattern.
Ted really loved wine.
He was hey, you know what? Hurrah, he has good taste in wine. He's a wino. Thank goodness for him.
Okay,
anyway.
So February 1976, his trial begins. In Utah, he's found guilty, sentenced to a minimum of 1 year, maximum of 15 years.
Right, which is like a bullshit sentence, okay? So what do you serve? 2?
But, no, while he's serving, he is charged with Karen Campbell's murder which, if you'll remember, was in Colorado, and that was in January 1975, so 9 months earlier. So he's finally charged with her murder 9 months later. Yeah. He is extradited from Utah to Colorado.
And Colorado just does a shit-tastic job with this.
A whole bunch of fucking shit goes wrong in Colorado. So,
sweet
he is charged with Campbell's murder in October, but he is not moved and extradited until January 1977. Right. Bundy...
Hey, I'm alive.
...moves to Colorado and faces murder charges. In May of 77, he pleads not guilty. However, he is granted, which I think is so fascinating, that he not only could manipulate women, but he was real good at manipulating men, too. And in June 1977, he is granted the ability to serve on his own defense.
Free access to the
law library.
I mean, just
free
come
access
and go
to the phone.
To the phone.
He doesn't have to wear handcuffs. He doesn't have to wear foot cuffs.
I mean, fuck, it's Ted Bundy. Let him run free.
Yep. Just basically, he just has to have a cop near him at all times.
Yeah. God bless you, Colorado.
Is where we are in the movie right now. It's about to fucking go down. So.
You're a beautiful state. You gotta get your shit together.
Colorado.
I love Colorado. But letting Ted Bundy go, not once, but.
We're not at that part yet. In June of the same year, beginning of June, he escapes from the courthouse.
Yeah.
He is using the law library on the second floor, which is just off of the courtroom. It's literally happening on the screen right now, which makes me so happy. But, so if the movie is to believe, the officer, the bailiff who's supposed to be watching him is chatting up a girl and not paying attention.
He's getting his Mac on.
And Ted opens up the window, jumps from a second story landing out onto the ground.
Right.
Hurts his ankle.
Yes.
But runs off.
Absolutely.
And Rule goes over it in the book. He had a change of clothes on underneath.
Yeah, he did the double clothing system, which I guess is a normal thing for inmates.
Yep. So in the movie, it's a little bit different. He kind of rips apart his clothing and, makes a little bag for himself.
On to look like every other Colorado hippie.
But in actuality, he had a change of clothes on underneath his clothes.
Right.
So he jumps from the landing, rips off his first layer of clothing, and then just books it. He is on the lam for about 5 days before he's finally found in the mountains. Around Aspen. And then, which is 5 days. He's on the run for 5 days, and then he's found.
Yep.
On June 15th, 1977, he is charged with escape, burglary, and felony theft.
Okay.
And found guilty. Of all of them.
And while he's in custody for the murder of an innocent, beautiful girl. Mm-hmm. Now he's added more charges.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. So he would not have had... So Colorado didn't have the death penalty. Neither did Utah.
Oh, Utah did have the death penalty.
Not at the time. Nope. We'll go into it way later on, but she goes on in her epilogue. But so Utah didn't have the death penalty. Colorado did not have the death penalty at the time. All he would have served for the attempted kidnap, because it was a murder. It was Campbell's murder. I think the max he would have served at that time would not have been very long. I think it would have been 20, like 20 years.
But you were eligible for parole.
He escaped and then was charged with felony escape.
Let's talk about how he did that.
Then became life.
Yes.
In prison.
So he loses a shit ton of weight, and Anne goes and sees him. He's sending letters back and forth the entire time. He loses, after the first escape, he loses a ton of weight. He goes from like his normal 165, 170 pounds to like 135.
Which we find out later on was on purpose.
Because he cuts the light box from his cell.
We're going to stop right there. That's going to be the end of part 1.
No.
Of Ted.
No.
His escape is our beginning of part 2.
No, but we're not that far yet. The weight loss was intentional because he cuts out the light fixture in the cell.
Escape.
Then he escapes.
Yeah. So, Ted
I have something I'd like to mention when you're done.
Ted starts planning his escape. Like Brandy said, he lost a lot of weight. So he could fit in these air ducts. He had a room that had the shower pipes, right?
Yeah.
Right above it. Mm-hmm. So the shower pipes were extremely loud whenever someone would be using the shower. So he cut a hole in the ceiling just big enough for him and his little teeny tiny self to go up into the pipes. He used his books and pillows to make it look like he was still laying in bed. So even though he had escaped in the really early hours of the morning in December of 1977, they actually didn't discover he was missing for about 15 hours.
Oh, plenty of time to get away.
Plenty of time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with Ted's escape, that is going to be the end of part 1.
Yes,
Ted,
I'm going to go in and touch
about halfway through his story, because we have a whole other mess of stuff to talk about.
We get into a lot of stuff. In addition to what Sarah has mentioned, when they find out that he, by the way, Anne Rule sending him birthday cards this whole time.
Yep. Money. She sent him money.
Yep. Stamps, books, this whole time. So not only does he have
protein bars.
Yeah. Because he's losing so much weight, she's worried about him.
And while he's in jail, he starts petitioning for the food to be better.
Oh, yeah. The entire time, he represents himself. I don't get sunshine. I don't get this.
Political career aspirations afterwards.
Oh, yeah. He's like, I'm going to get out of here.
Which is important, because he thinks that he's still going to get out.
Oh, he does.
He thinks that this is all going to go away.
He's the smartest SOB.
Yep.
What I'd like to mention is when he escapes, the city of Aspen, Colorado, does a crazy bunch of little things. They have bumper stickers made up.
Oh, yeah.
And one of my favorite ones that I had to mention was, Bundy's free, you can bet your Aspen. Okay. And then also, the Anne Rule's book goes into talking about when the police were looking for Bundy, and they start getting just a flood of phone calls in. Mm-hmm. And there was this particular booth in each restaurant throughout large cities of Colorado that was called Booth D. Did you pick up on this one? And Booth D is where we went to buy our cocaine.
Yep.
So there would be sightings of Teddy.
I remember laughing at that part in the book because all I could think of was everyone needs the D.
D. We need the D. I couldn't help but remark on that because people are citing him all over in Booth D. Y'all are wrong. He's straight out of Colorado. You can bet your Aspen on it.
At that point, Ted's escape from Colorado is where we're going to end this episode.
You can bet your Aspen on it.
You can bet your Aspen that we'll be back next week.
Oh, yeah.
To finish up part 2, where we're going to go into Florida, a.k.a. Ted is the original Florida man.
The original.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, send emails with feedback. We love you all.
We love you. Thank you for listening.
Stay dark and twisty.
Well, and yeah, don't forget about Teddy, the lady killer.